Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to welcome all of you for our sixth live webinar today. I should say welcome to your TV program, your feedchannel.online. As often as possible, we give you the opportunity to address different concerns, from the practical issues to the scientific explanation, with experts from all over the world, from the science as well as from the industry. Each webinar starts with an introduction of the problematic or the worldwide context and the practical issues, and then well-known scientists address the fundamental basis of the problematics, and roundtables allows all of you to ask openly questions to our invitees. Since our previous webinars, we are posting lots of events on the Feed Channel platform. Even from the beginning of the year 2018, we have posted different seminars, the Asia-Pacific Poultry Conference, the main reviews. We organized a live webinar on meat quality with Professor Massimiliano Petracci, Dr. Cecile Berry, Paul Lopez from the industry. And we have also posted a lot of events like the first Advancia Academy last year in Bangkok, and as well as the oxidative stress session in Orlando organized during the PSA conference. We have also a lot of reviews in the Intestinal Health Scientific Interest Group organized in Bangkok last October. So you will see a lot of documents, events, videos on the Feed Channel platform, and also a lot of debates and roundtables to allow scientists, in fact, to exchange on different topics. It is a sixth Feed Channel live webinar today, and we are focusing on how to maintain egg quality for long laying cycles. And I just take the position here to remind you that you can post questions on the site at any time during the presentation. So don't forget, you can post your questions on Feed Channel platform, and they will be addressed later on by our experts. And if we have no time to answer to all questions, in fact, the response will be on the platform. With the occurrence of avian influenza, the strong demand on eggs, more and more layer producers want to prolong the laying cycle. Genetic companies have done a tremendous work, because a long time ago we were talking about 50, 65 weeks of age, or even 72 weeks of age. Now we are currently talking more than 90 weeks of age, and it is really more and more frequent now to talk about 100 weeks. But it's very often a question from nutritionists, from producers, from farmers, how to manage such a long cycling period, and what should we change in nutrition, in management, in health. We often talk about requirements or needs, and they have not been often investigated on a long laying cycle. So it's very important to address all these questions, and we decided, in fact, to address this important issue on how to maintain egg quality for long laying cycles, taking into account the products, the egg, but taking into account also the layers and also the future of the layer. This webinar will be part of a series of webinars on eggs and layers, and I think it's important to address the different issues. And we also decided to have some didactic videos to better understand some fundamental aspects like the eggshell mechanism. So shortly you will get more information on how the eggshell is constituted and developed in the eggs. And I'm pleased to welcome today four well-known experts and scientists of the egg industry and science. Dr. Vincent Guyonnet from FFI in Canada. He was previously advisor at the International Egg Commission, and now he's an independent consultant. Vincent is in Canada and accepted to be recorded just prior to our webinar today. Due to the Skype difficulty to have the connection, we prefer to have a recording before, but he will be also online to answer to your questions later on. Dr. Yves from INRA in France, our past president of the European Federation of WPSA, I do not further present Yves, as if you are concerned by eggs or layers, you have met his name many times, and I think it's a very well-known expert in hen nutrition, and recently released a very comprehensive series of books on the egg and layers with other scientists. He is also one of the first who addressed the question of prolonging the laying production beyond 70 weeks of age. I'm pleased also to introduce Dr. Joël Gautron from INRA France too, and specialist of the eggshell. He will illustrate the level of knowledge he and his team have developed on the eggshell development, and he also invests a lot on the protein composition and properties of the egg white. And I should have started with Valérie Le Chevalier before, but the privilege to be the last presentation and the lady in the round table from AgroCampus West in France, in Rennes, who is focusing on the hen product, so the egg product as the end product of what the layer are doing. She's involved on the fractionation of the egg components and also the functionality or the functional properties of the different constituents of the eggs. So before jumping into this hot topic of prolonging the laying cycle up to 100 weeks of age, I would like to ask Dr. Vincent Guyonnet to give a rapid overview of the worldwide egg production. And the first question we could address would be, what is the current egg production worldwide and what are the leading countries? So please, Vincent, even if we know that it has been recorded just before, but please answer to that question about the overview of the egg production.
We are very fortunate to work for a sector that has been recording strong growth over the past 10 years. According to data from the FAO, the egg sector grew by 27.5% or 15.9 million metric tons between 2006 and 2016, second only to the poultry meat sector and ahead of all the other animal source food productions. The top 10 egg producing countries in 2016 are listed on this slide. China continues to dominate the global egg production with 26.5 million metric tons, a production more than 4 times larger than the number 2, the USA. India, with 4.5 million metric tons, is quickly closing the gap with the USA and should become the number 2 producing country within a few years. Overall, Asia has 6 countries in this top 10 list, and Latin America is also well positioned with both Mexico and Brazil in the list. Overall, these 10 countries account for almost 69% of the global egg production. As we can see on this next slide, with a global production close to 74 million metric tons in 2016, 60.2% of the production was based in Asia, 14.9% in Europe, and 11.4% in Latin America. And Asia is certainly the region where we must expect more growth, with countries like India, Indonesia, and Turkey expanding production very rapidly. In fact, on this next slide, we can see that Asia has accounted for 68% of the growth in egg production over the past 20 years. And as I mentioned, we will continue to observe rapid growth from this region for a foreseeable future. And along with the growth in egg production, the consumption of eggs is on the rise in many countries. On a global basis, each person on the planet consumes 165 eggs per year. But as you can see from this slide, we have tremendous differences between countries. Mexicans are the number 1 egg consumers with 371 eggs per person per year. That is more than 1 egg per day. Japanese rank second with 331. The consumption in the US increased by 17 over the past 10 years to reach 272 eggs per person per year. In India, each person in 2016 consumed 66 eggs, which represented 43% over the past 10 years. In many countries, the increase of egg consumption is attributed to both more meal opportunities for eggs, expanding outside the traditional breakfast consumption of eggs, and also more eggs being consumed in a single meal, meaning more than 1 egg at a time.
Thanks, Vincent. Often to remember numbers, we say that there is one hen per habitant. But what about the production models developed worldwide? And do you think that the evolution toward cage-free hens, as we are facing in Europe, will spread in the rest of the world?
Yes, as you can see on this next slide, for example, China, dominates the ranking in terms of laying hens, with 1.35 billion birds, which is almost one hen per person, followed by the US with 309 million and India with 214 million. The largest flock in Latin America is in Mexico with 158 million birds. For Europe, it is in France with 48 million birds. And for Africa, it is in Nigeria with 50 million birds. On this next slide, we see that the vast majority of the top 10 egg-producing countries still raise birds in conventional cage systems. It is mostly in Europe, with the ban of conventional cages back in 2012, that we have seen a larger usage of non-cage housing systems, mostly free-range systems. There is also a very strong push by retailers and food service companies in North America to move towards cage-free production. Another trend in production system is the consolidation of the sector with larger farms and more birds per site. It is certainly best observed in China, where until now the average farm size was around 5,450 hens. It is changing very quickly due to government regulations in terms of farm waste management and food safety concerns. Throughout China, we now see a fast-growing number of production sites with several million birds. Currently, the top 10 producers represent less than 3% of the Chinese production. Within 10 years, it is anticipated that they will represent about 30% of the Chinese production. The average farm size is also expected to increase to 50,000 hens. Bigger farms will translate into better management, improved nutrition of the birds, higher production efficiencies, as well as safe and higher quality eggs. The egg sector is also being challenged more and more on some of its long-established practices. Since the ban of conventional cages in Europe, we have seen a strong development in alternative housing systems like barn, aviaries, and free-range systems. In addition to a higher investment per hen, these alternative systems have also brought new problems. With birds on the floor and in direct contact with feces, we are seeing the reemergence of some old diseases like coccidiosis and roundworms. With cleaning between flocks more challenging, the infestation of European flocks with red mites has become more prevalent, contributing to lower production, higher mortality, and an increased percentage of floor eggs. All factors contributing to losses estimated around €2.5 per bird. This lower productivity has also an impact on the environment, as less eggs are being produced for the same amount of feed consumed and the same amount of emission of greenhouse gases. Big trimming has also been banned in a few European countries like Denmark 2014 and Germany in 2017, or will be banned in the near future like in the Netherlands. Finally, the disposal of male chicks at the hatchery is also a question in several countries. So overall, we see that a number of current practices like big trimming, molting, or disposal of male chicks are being challenged, either by government with new regulations or by large retailers and food service companies under pressure from NGOs and activist campaigns.
We consider the layers and the eggs, but what about the egg products? So maybe Valérie can comment a little bit more on what we do with the eggs after.
Yes, indeed. So egg products are transformed, and most of them in basic products such as liquid egg white, egg yolk, or whole egg. We have also powders, and liquid egg products and powders represent 90% of the egg products, and there is 10% which are second transformation egg products such as omelette or hard-boiled egg or egg in bar, and which are for out-of-home catering mainly.
Okay, thank you, Valérie. Regarding our focus today on a webinar on prolonging laying production, what is the situation regarding this duration of production worldwide? Vincent, can you illustrate a little bit more on that?
We are seeing indeed a trend towards increased length in the laying cycle without molting. This trend has some very significant benefit for the egg sector. In financial terms, it allows for more eggs to be produced by the same birds, making the non-productive pullet stage cheaper when related to the number of eggs produced. In terms of sustainability, the feeds consumed and the corresponding emission of greenhouse gases during the pullet stage are spread across a larger quantity of egg produced, therefore reducing the emission expressed in CO2 equivalent per kilo of eggs produced. Various studies have established these emissions currently between 2 and 4 kilos of CO2 equivalent per kilo of eggs. Finally, using less hens to produce the same quantity of eggs will also reduce the needs to dispose of male chicks at the hatcheries. The trend for longer laying cycle is strongly encouraged and promoted by the current work of genetic companies, selecting for hens able to produce 500 eggs by 100 weeks of age. With a longer production cycle, nutrition will play an even more critical role in terms of egg quality and shell strength. And we will see other presentation following mine deal with this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. The first question I would like to address to Dr. Ivnis is how we can help to maintain egg quality in long laying cycle.
Okay. As underlined by Dr. Guillonnet, they have the breeding company did a very nice work by increasing the number of eggs. Initially, they did by working on the peak of production. They also try to have an early sexual maturity, but since 15 years they really improve the capacity of the ant to produce for regularly. So they work on the persistency, and now there is quite a lot of ants who are able to produce 500 eggs at 100 weeks of age. The problem, what they did also, what was important, was to increase the quality of the egg in all ends. So they changed the way to make the selection and select ends for good egg quality. But all gains they get was used to have a larger number of eggs. And so they just delay the problem. And the problem is when you keep ends for a very long period, you still have the problem of eggshell quality, oat unit, and then you can have, because when hen is producing for 90 weeks, you will export more than 27 kilos of eggs, so that means about 14-fold her body weight. So it's really a challenge. And so you can have some metabolic disease, like the hepatic steatosis, the problem of osteoporosis, and what we observe is that the decision to finish the egg production will no more be on the egg number, but will be at the number of eggs you can sell, so on the quality of egg. Okay.
Talking about the long laying cycle, what is important of the pullet management before?
So it seems that pullet management is an important issue. For this end, it's really, first point, it's really a challenge because, as you know, the laying hens are very low weight. The egg production has increased, and so it's really a metabolic challenge. And so it's important to adapt the rearing period to the long laying cycle. And one of the problems is that the people in charge of rearing the pullets and producing hens are not always in the same company. And of course, the people who are rearing the pullet will try to do it at a low cost. But during this period, you have some change in the body composition, so you have to adapt the nutrition to optimize the nutrition, especially for protein during the first period and during the transition period to the sexual maturity, and it costs. And so it's important to have a good relationship between the two who are in charge of the And of course, what is important about nutrition will be mainly the protein, of course, during the initial period of growth and during the period where you have all the reproductive organ. But another point is to prepare the pullet to eat more, because when the laying hen is initiated, you will have a large increase in the requirement, and so you have to train the hen to feed more. And so during the period between 10 to 16 weeks of age, we have the opportunity first to train the pullet to eat particle size, and also because we can reduce protein level, it's possible to introduce fiber in order to develop the organ to facilitate the digestibility of the diet during the laying period. Okay, so what is finally important is to reach the target who are established for each line by the breeding company, especially in terms of body weight of the pullets, because we have to avoid that during the initial period of egg production that there is a requirement for the growth. So it is important to have the right body weight, so to adapt nutrition to that, and of course also we have to adapt at the end the calcium phosphorus for the development of the mineral bone. And what is well established is that there is a relationship between the body weight of the pullets and the initial egg weight, but even during the older second period of laying period, you have a relationship between these two. So it's a way to control the egg weight.
So it's very important not to compromise, in fact, the future by poor management of the
so
pullets.
that's an important point.
What about the on the nutrition part, on the egg formation and so on energy and protein?
Of course, the energy of the laying hen has to be adapted during the period of egg production, and we know that there is a linear relationship between the daily energy consumption and the egg weight. When you will increase by about 1 gram the egg weight when you add 10 kilocalories daily for the hen. Of course, that is true mainly for level of energy who are lower than 2,850 about here, but it's working. Another point is to control the protein level, because we know that there's again a relationship between the dietary consumption of protein and the egg weight, and there is a linear relationship, and the egg weight will increase by on mean 1.4 gram per gram of protein. And so by playing with these two nutrients, we can adapt the change in body weight. And of course, another point will be the fatty composition of the diets, because it's one way to control the egg weight. And that will be one of the parameters to control during the whole laying period. Initially to increase egg weight, and at the end to avoid the large increase in egg weight and increase in body weight.
There is one parameter you often address, I know, in different conferences and so on, is the texture or the feed presentation, the particle size and so on.
Yes, of course, when you are considering the feed of the hens, you have to know the composition of the diets, but another point is the level of consumption. The level of consumption is globally controlled by the energy level of the diets, and level of lipid in the diet. But another way of management is to control the size of the particle, because we know that the laying hens, they prefer to use larger particles than young animals, and so you will stimulate the consumption by changing the size. At least you have to give particles higher than 0.8 to 2 millimeters. That will improve the feed consumption, and that has some positive aspect, as shown in this slide, on the quality of the egg. So it's another way. It's very well known for the calcium particle, of course, but other you can improve the egg quality.
And talking about prolonging the laying cycle, do you think that the particle size should increase with the age of the hens?
Yeah, for about I'm not sure. What is will be important is maybe especially for the calcium carbonate, is the proportion of the particle size. In young hen, you maybe will be 50-50, but in older hen, it will be probably better to increase the proportion of large particle of calcium carbonate.
When prolonging laying cycles, the problem of variability is very important. We are more and more concerned with the prolongation of laying cycles. So can you comment on that, Yves?
Yes, it is very interesting to note that there is a large heterogeneity in the laying production between the different ends of a flock. On this slide, you see that for a mean of about 80%, you have 65% of the hen who are laying more than this mean level, and you have about 40% of hen who are laying more than 90%, but you still have some who are laying at a very low level. So how we should manage? So the strategy will be to decide to feed the hen who are a larger production in order to maintain a large number of eggs, hoping that because we know that the hen is able to regulate his intake relative to his requirement, to the energy level, and so to avoid the extra cost. So the strategy will be to feed the best hen. So to provide more energy and amino acid and protein.
So when we consider egg quality, we should also consider just egg size and downgrading the quality of the eggs. Valérie, can you comment a little bit more on that?
Yes, and the variability is also very important for egg producers, since eggs that are going for transformation are the byproducts of table eggs, and then we have around 30 or 50% of the eggs from a layer that are going to be either bigger or too big or too small for the table egg market, and that it goes to the transformation. And we also have part of the egg who are coming from declassed eggs, so cracked shell, for example, or dirt eggs, and so it's a big variability for the egg producer because they have so many different raw materials, and it's a challenge for them to do like.
Okay, so downgrading the eggs through the eggshell is a big issue. So I'm sure that Joël has even more to talk about the eggshell quality and maintaining the eggshell quality.
Yes, the eggshell, it appears to be very simple, but in fact it's a very complex material. It is made, you can see on the slide some picture taken by electronic microscopes and some schematic drawing on the right, and the composition of shell is mainly made of calcium carbonate, but this calcium carbonate is made of a specific shape which is named calcite, and inside the eggshell you will find a few amount of proteins and proteoglycans which constitute an organic matrix, and these minor components are really important because they are controlling the biomineralization process, and this is what this interaction between mineral phase and organic phase is at the origin of the ultrastructure and the final texture of the eggshell, which define its mechanical property, and of course it is evolving along the laying period too.
How do we measure those eggshell characteristics practically?
We can measure using different systems. So first system that I can describe is the acoustic test egg tester. It is composed of a piano hammer which comes to it rotating eggs at 4 different places, and it's used on grading systems. And the acoustic vibration of the eggshell is registered by a microphone, and from this acoustic vibration we can define if the egg is already if there is some small microfracture that are not visible by eyes, and we can have also some dynamic stiffness which are registered and which can be used for selection, for example. And on the other slide, you have another system. This is the instrumechanical data. On this system, you have a constant load which is applied on the surface of the equator of the eggs, and you can measure the deformations of the eggshell, which we and did from this value to have the elasticity of the shell structure, and also you can measure the eggshell breaking strength, and taking it into account all these parameters and the shape parameter of the egg, we can determine the general toughness of the egg.
So it's a bit like cars. In fact, instead of having very strong, massive cars, you need to have something more deformable. So how do you comment between static stiffness and dynamic stiffness?
What will be the best, as you say, the comparison with car is good, because you have to have a good car, could go fast, but to be solid. So for the shell, it's the same. You have to have a strong eggshell, very rigid, with high toughness, but large elasticity also will be the best.
Mm-hmm. What are the factors that are affecting shell, in fact?
Okay, the factors that affecting shells are numerous. Many of them are already well known. Of course, there is the genetic of the bird, the physiology of birds, and of course the age of birds. And also there is some nutritional factors, the optimization of feeds and so on. And also the management of the hens, and all the environment of the birds, like lighting programs, the temperature, of course. And one important aspect is also, when we speak about the degraded eggs, is the insult, the stress which are supported by the eggs during the process of production, so in the rearing system, in the egg transport, or in supermarket or at home. So what I can say is that the genetic has improved a lot, the quality of eggshell. The nutrition is really well optimized now, and so it's limit a lot this degrading eggs, but it doesn't eliminate the breakage of eggs, and specifically during the last period, when the upper to 70 weeks, and when we have still some
beyond.
work.
Yeah. And when we talk about eggshell, very often we talk about minerals. It's classical to say, okay, it's a question of calcium, it's a question of calcium. But what about the proteins? And I know that you are a fervent expert on protein matrix.
Yeah. Okay, so on the next slide, you have some representation of the different phases of the shell formations. You have different events which are crucial to have the final texture of the eggshell, which determine the shell mechanical property. And during this event of mineralization, we have analyzed the composition of proteins which are involved in this process, and we found more than 700 proteins in this process. Of course, some of them are very in low amount and do not play a role, but we can focus more now on a more restricted list of candidate proteins that we know that they are involved in the shell biomineralization process. How we know that? We have used, you can see on the next slide, we have performed some bioinformatic analysis, and we have detected we have determined the functional activities of the identified matrix proteins, and we found some proteins which are directly associated to the mineral phase, to control the mineralization process and to drive the morphology, to stabilize the mineral, to give to the mineral a specific shape and the texture. And you have also some proteins which are present here just to regulate the formation, the protein which are driving the mineralizations. So it's a very important focus for the future, and we expect to use this data now in some genomic selection scheme to improve the shell quality of elderly eggs.
Thank you, Joël. How to help all layers now through nutrition? And I think we can ask Yves about his knowledge on that, because really eggshell is an issue, but nutritionally, what can we do?
Well, nutrition is a very important part, and it's very well known, because when you are making a mistake in nutrition, because you are giving a low level of calcium or whatever, you will see immediately the effect on the eggshell quality. So the eggshell strength will depend on two factors: the amount of material and the fabric. And the fabric depends on the mineral matrix as shown by Joel previously. One of the problems we have is that in all end, very often the defect is more a problem of the fabric, not on the amount of material. But we still, by nutrition, can control this amount of material, but not only it is important to control the amount, but also it is very important to synchronize the calcium supply with the calcium formation, because the calcium formation occurs during the night. So there have been a lot of techniques who are known in 1 century. For example, the particle size of calcium who are well known to help to have this synchronization. Concerning the fabric, it's mainly genetic, and there is a big effort to improve the eggshell quality in old end, but there is not so many nutrients who are known to improve the quality. But it's possible that in the future, because now we are able to measure the protein synthesis of the eggshell matrix and the amount of protein and to quantify. So maybe we can look if some additive, for example, will affect specifically some protein specific to the eggshell who are involved in the fabric. I want to give you just a few examples concerning the effect of the nutrition. So you can see that the calcium, of course, the level of calcium is important. It's very well known. And another point is the size of the particle of calcium. When you are using larger particle, you will increase the synchronization. And that is also important for the bone, because in this case, you can improve the bone by 20% in all ends. So you avoid some osteoporosis. There is, however, one example with manganese, where we have, by manganese, it's acting on the proteoglycan, and so it will act on the fabric and will not really modifies the amount of calcium. So it's a very well-known example about the effect nutrition of the fabric, but about only one.
So we have a lot of issues regarding nutrition for the layers, and particularly when we will prolong the laying cycle. When we talk about quality of eggs, we should talk about also the functional properties and technological properties. So maybe, Valérie, you can describe a little bit more on that.
Yes, of course. So to remind you, I just have on this slide the egg white composition, and we are used to say that egg white is an aqueous solution of proteins, since there are mainly proteins, a little bit of glucose and of minerals, but that's mainly proteins. And egg yolk, in the next slide, is rather a complex lipoprotein solutions with 30% of lipids, which are linked to the proteins often in lipoproteins. So, and also a little bit of glucose and more minerals than in white. And
okay. And how can we measure the quality of the egg white and egg yolk?
So there are. Maybe we should define first what we call quality, because quality for table eggs is not necessarily quality for egg products. For example, in table eggs, the weight will be important for egg products. What is important is dry matter and dry extract, because that's what they sell, in fact, and so. We measure the physical properties such as Hawk unit, for example, but that's the most important. So for the egg white is the dry extract and the functional properties, which are directly dependent on the dry extract. So you can see on this slide how to measure the Hawk unit. So there are some special requirements for that. And for egg yolk quality, color is important, but what is really important for egg product is the membrane resistance, because as all of us know, when you have a little bit of yolk in the white, it's no good for forming properties. So that's
at individual level, we know that.
Difficult to have some good.
So that's what is really important for the egg producers, and it depends, maybe it could depend on the age of the layer.
And it's so important, because we are joking about individual cooking and so on, but it's so important also for the egg industry, a little bit of yolk in the white and so on.
So
even in large quantities, I would say.
No, it's just 0.03% of yolk in white, and then you can see it in the foaming properties. So
you can compromise the
yes,
good white
it's
properties
just
and so on.
trace of yolk.
Yeah.
And so egg is used in many industry for its many functional properties, either whole egg, egg white, or egg yolk, in liquid or in powder. But we use it for coloring, binding, gelling, foaming, and emulsifying for the yolk, and also for its nutritional value, because it's one of the more balanced ingredients.
Yeah, we should not forget that. Huh?
Yeah.
It's a
very
good
important.
food, in fact.
Yeah.
If we focus on the age effect, how can you illustrate a little bit more the consequence of age on the egg properties or egg components?
Alors, there are some consequences, but in fact the studies are quite old, so we don't have information over 72 weeks, which are the only data we have. So we know that the major elements are quite stable. For example, the protein are the same. They don't change so much in quantity. The coefficient of variation of the major element is around 5%, so it's not that much. We have a change in the Hoch unit anyway, but the most variations are for minor elements such as minerals, vitamins, or fatty acids. But it's also due to the nutrition of the layer during the period, and so it's very difficult to separate the effect of the age and the effect of the nutrition. So we don't have that elements.
And if we look more at the properties, you know,
Yes.
the functional properties or technological properties.
So there are some studies showing that when Hoch unit decreased, such when the layer are getting older, we have influence on foaming properties, and so foam capacity, which is the quantity of foam you can do with a volume of egg whites, rather decrease, but not that much, but rather decrease with the age of hens. But the stability is better, so it means your foam will getting stable longer. So it's rather a good news.
So with older hens, in fact, you would have less quantity of foam, but better, more stable.
But it's yes, we often have this antagonism between the both properties. When you have lots of foams, it's not that much stable. And
what do we know beyond 72 or 75 weeks of age? Do you know if initially we talk about the white and yolk proportions, so we say it's quite stable, but on the properties, it's something to address.
Yes, it's something to address. There is a lack of knowledge in that case, because all the studies done are quite old, and we don't have recent data on this. We have recent data on kind of if it's cage or barn free, or yeah, we have, but no on the age.
So there is a need to have
to
investigate more and to find us to have some financial support to perform such experiments.
Yes, and often the studies stopped at the quality for the table eggs, and there are fewer studies going to the functional properties. And
when you talk about foaming property, but about the
gelling properties as well. Yes, as well. We have I would say. Bigger effect on the gel texture, because the gel strength can decrease from 30% between a young hen and a old hen. And I mean old, it's 72 weeks, so it's not that old, no. Mm-hmm. So this is also important.
So now it is important to synthesize all this information. I know that we could talk for many days about that, but we have observed things. We are still questioning the potential of nutrition. And I think I would like to ask Yves, as a privileged expert, in fact, for the long time, to conclude on this topic.
Okay. So it's clear that the current breeding strategy to increase the persistency in lay is really promising. And of course, all breeding companies are still working to improve the eggshell quality, the hot unit, so there will be progress. And so the problem of egg quality will delay. But of course, this and when they are producing 500 eggs, it's really a challenge for the metabolism. And so we have to face some problem of osteoporosis, hepatic steatosis, and feather picking. And in this case, nutrition will be an important issue. For example, we can play with the amount of lipid in the diets to avoid to stimulate too much metabolism of the liver and to limit the impact of hepatic steatosis. For bone, I evoke the calcium particle size, for example. And for the picking, it will be mainly the management of the feed to introduce fiber or whatever to control the bird, and still some genetic. We will also underline the fact that the pullet period is very important. So to prepare the pullets to be able to eat more when at the beginning of the laying period, and to prepare for the medullary bone and so on. So that's an important point to control this phase of production. And then, because the laying hens are really challenging, it will be important to better control the strategy of feeding. I mean, to the distribution of feed, maybe use some sequential feeding or whatever, some alternative technique to encourage the hen to eat more and to adapt to the challenge. And finally, the last point to underline is the fact that at the end of the laying period, where we have some heterogeneity in the bird, so we have to feed the best bird to maintain the high production level. So that maybe the...
So there is still potential for the nutritionist to do something, and for the management
there is
also.
still a lot of work to improve, but it's clear that nutrition is not a miracle. I mean, you have to look at nutrition globally and to avoid any mistake and management. That it's the whole thing was to be optimized. Not there is no miracle solution.
I'm sure that has raised a lot of questions. So many questions I think arrived during the presentation. We will try to answer to some of them. If we have not more time, you will be able to find the answers in the website. The first question today: most of nutritionists consider only 3 phases for the laying feeds. Onset of lay, usually mid-lay, I would say 60 weeks, and end lay. But with a longer laying period, should we have different feeds for all hens?
Well, I am not convinced that we should have had feed. We should better adapt the different period to the egg performance and egg quality of the animal. So to have a sort of continuous recording of the performance and the quality of the egg, and to adapt the feed to control the egg weight, for example. But we don't need really to add an additional phase, because indeed it's just a delay of the drop in the quality with the age. But we still have this problem is not new.
Yeah, it's just
it's a whole problem. It's just the period we are changing. The duration of each period has to be adapted, not the number of phases.
Interesting. Next question. Do long production cycle compromise or affect the storage ability or duration of egg conservations? Maybe more for Valérie. Do we know if old eggs give eggs that you can still keep in your... I would say the cupboard, not the fridge, but for a long time?
Well, if it affects the quality of the shells, then we can think that maybe we would have more water transfer or from the eggs to the exterior, for example, or maybe we... it's a good question. We don't have so much in...
There are not so much data, but we are developing a current program to evaluate the effect of age on the storage of eggs, the evolution of yolk units, and it will be also, you have also to consider that it will be an interaction of the age of birds, the time of preservations,
and conditions,
external
conditions,
temperature, So, and it's a complex question, but has to be investigated more. It's a good question.
Indeed, we did investigate this question with Nicolas Guyot from the group of Joël. And we know that with the age, we have a decrease in hot units and so on. And so there is, of course, genetic will improve that. But then we look if by the storage it was possible. So there is two ideas. The first idea will be to keep the egg as soon as possible at a low temperature. It's a classical way. Another issue we like to look at is the condition of storage. Not the temperature, but we can use a technique to preserve egg until special gas. And maybe so we know that, for example, CO2 is improving the hot unit. So maybe we can at least slow down the process or
by specific management
of storage, but will not inverse. When you have a low quality,
I'm not
sure that is possible to restore, or maybe it has to be explored. But until now, it has not been shown. But at least we can keep the quality during the storage as it was at the initial step of collecting the
As
egg.
Vincent showed at the beginning, that most of the development of the egg production is in Asian countries, hot countries, I would say. What could be the interference between hot temperature and the conservation, particularly when you prolong the laying cycle?
Of course, we know that indeed when we have a decrease of the quality of the hot units at, for example, high temperature, is due to the fact that we change a bit the physiology of the egg, but the main effect is directly on the egg, because when you keep the egg at a high temperature, you have a very rapid decrease of the hot unit. So it's a sample, it's sampled the way. Now it should be sampled. That means if you put the egg at a lower temperature, you will maintain its quality.
And there is an additional important question is the antimicrobial property of the egg white. You know that the egg white, if you put bacteria inside the egg white, generally they do not grow. It's bactericidal or bacteriostatic. But with elderly, with old eggs, which are preserved at high temperature, we also have to evaluate how can evolve the antimicrobial protein inside.
Hygienic properties.
Hygienic, because we have, of course, to purchase some safe product for the consumers.
And that would be very important, because in hot countries like when we mentioned Mexico with more than 100 weeks, I think it's important to consider. Maybe we have another question on the website. With a strong demand developing worldwide on enriched eggs, we talk very often about omega-3, vitamin D, vitamin E, selenium. Do you think that old hens or prolonged laying cycle could compromise such benefits or enriched products? Do you think that...
Well, for me, it's not a real question, because we know that by nutrition we can enrich the egg. And if you want to optimize this egg with higher economical value, we will have to work with young hen or during the period where the egg, because the egg need to be of high quality, not only for its contents. And so we'll work during the first period of the laying period. We will not work with old hen.
So enriched egg will be focused on young hens.
Or at least during the first phase of the laying cycle.
Okay, thank you. Another question. In next few years, how do you think genetics can contribute to improve eggshell quality? That's maybe for Joël.
So I try to explain you that there are some proteins which are important in the shell forming process. So what we know now is to investigate. We know which proteins are important, and we can investigate in pure selected lines which proteins are present. They are all present in all birds, of course, but you have some small variation due to some gene polymorphisms inside, and we can associate these polymorphisms to some measurement quality parameter, egg quality measurement parameters, and that means that we can determine in the future select some haplotype of laying eggs, which will lay some stronger eggshells. And of course, there are also some. We are also to explore how vitamin D metabolite can influence at this period of age, because we know that some of these proteins are influenced by vitamin D, but the process of aging can influence, and possibly the vitamin D metabolisms could be lower at the last period than at the beginning period.
We didn't talk about the antioxidant properties and so on. Should we enrich a little bit in antioxidants to help the old ends, to get a better quality, like with vitamin E, selenium, and so on?
Maybe, yeah, because for example, especially for the vitelline membrane, one of the problem in all end is that the vitelline membrane the quality of the vitelline membrane strength is going down, and so it's a problem for egg products. And it's known that some vitamin, like vitamin E, may improve a bit. So maybe by antioxidant can contribute to improve some functional property, or at least for the vitelline membranes, that can be explored.
What we know when we do some high throughput techniques is that there is plenty gene and protein related to antioxidant activities which are present, and of course we have to consider how they evolve during the aging period. I think it will be a good prospect too.
There will be also a question maybe for all of you. So could we go beyond 100 weeks? Because today we say often 90, 95 weeks, 100 weeks. But with that level of production that you show before and so on, why not to continue beyond?
Target 100 weeks, we say 100 weeks because it's very clear message. But of course, by genetic, there is no evidence that there is any limits. So they will go on to unzerability of the persistency of the different quality parameters. Eggshell are quite high. So yes, it may be possible to go further. Why not?
Maybe possible to go further, but I will be cautious because the limit is what the end can do. Of course, and what is genetically after a while. There is a need to renew the uterus if you want to have a better egg quality. So we can go beyond, but how long? It will be 10 weeks more or 5 weeks more. I think there will be a limit at the moment. But
you're right. But it's quite interesting because all those species, I would say, like sows, cows, and so on, we try today to renew too often the breeders and so on. But in layers now, we say, okay, why not to go further? Maybe another question, and. Egg is one of the most balanced, and Valérie said that before, it's a good diet, in fact, for humans. And that would be addressed to Vincent. What do you think about its potential in developing countries such as Africa? So Vincent, if you can address, I know that it's favorite topic, talking about Africa, so...
First of all, as you may remember, last year there was a tremendous study being published where Dr. Iannotti from the USA showed that giving young children between 6 and 9 months of age 1 egg a day was able to reduce stunting by about 47%. So tremendous impact of what egg can do in young children in terms of nutrition. If we look at Africa, there is certainly a huge deficit in terms of egg production. Africa, the continent, about 16.4% of the population, but only 4.3% of the egg production. So there is a lag there. Based on FAO data 2013, we had population in 50 countries that was consuming less than 1 egg per week, and 34 of those countries were in Africa. There's even in 9 countries, people consume less than 1 egg per month. So really, when we consider the great nutritional value of the egg, not just because of the high quality protein, but also all the vitamins and minerals that are in the eggs, this is a missed opportunity, and I certainly hope that production of eggs and consumption in Africa and other developing countries is going to increase in the near future.
So thanks very much, Vincent. I know it's not easy to participate to a debate from so far abroad. I would like now to warmly thank our today speakers who accepted to share their experience and expertise and to participate to this webinar. You will be able to listen again to the program on feedchannel.online. Don't worry if you want to better understand or review some elements. You will have also the opportunity to look at some other answers to other questions that have been dropped into the website. Don't be disappointed if your question has not been put forward. I hope you enjoy this webinar and you will continue to appreciate Feed Channel. And I give you our next appointment for this next live webinar in June. It will be focusing on dietary electrolyte balance and sodium salt. So I think it's another quite interesting topics. But don't worry, we will come back to eggs and layers later on. So thanks to our scientists around the table and Vincent abroad. And bye-bye everyone. And looking forward to seeing you on Feed Channel sometime.